Hey everyone, welcome to the Oaks podcast and potentially the Engage and Equip podcast if we post in both. My name is Jill. I'm the Oaks Ministry Director, and I'm here with Paxton, who is our Student Ministries Pastor at High Point Church.
Hello.
And Brittany, who is our Student Ministries Director at High Point Church.
Hello.
And you work specifically with middle schoolers.
Correct. Yes.
And then Jace is our Oaks intern this summer, and he's worked with teens for peer support and as a mentor and with the youth group as well.
Hello.
So thanks, guys, for all being here today. I'm really excited to talk about this with you. A few things just to kind of frame the episode. So we're talking about teen mental health today, but specifically meeting teens' needs for mental health, community, and resilience within the local church. So a few things on that before we dive in. But first, so teen mental health is, obviously a kind of a crisis point in our culture and a big concern. And so that's also true in the church. And as a culture, we've kind of sought to solve this problem by throwing on a lot more mental health care and counseling, which we're not trying to say that that's not part of what can help in this podcast. But part of what leads to mental health issues like depression and anxiety is like a lack of meaning or a lack of relationships or purpose or fun even. Like just when we focus in only on the mental health issues, it can kind of perpetuate that problem. And so those things like meaning and purpose and fun and relationships are built into the local church and into faith. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. And I'll also say here, there's a lot of experts who have written on these topics over the years. And right now, I really wanted to interview people with experience. Like you guys are boots on the ground, working with teens, have relationships with teens, have had all these conversations. And I think there's a lot of intuitive knowledge in that as well. And that's really valuable. And sometimes when we only go to the experts, we kind of forget what's real, So we just want to talk about what the experience in the local church is like. Anything before we get started that you guys want to add to kind of that framing?
No, thanks for having us.
Yeah.
I think it's really important to talk about, and there's a real need to have these conversations and for people who are equipped to minister to teens and care about them. So thanks for having us on.
Yeah. And I will say, like, when teens come through Oaks, the first question I ask is, are you involved in youth group? So, because I think that's a huge asset. So just diving in first as a little snapshot and context for our listeners, could you tell us a little bit about yourself? So you can kind of answer any parts of these questions briefly, but where were you in your walk with God as a teen, and what questions were you asking about God, yourself, and the world? I think that'll help us kind of get back into the frame of reference. We were all a teen once, right? And what led you to working to teens now, and what do you like most about working with teens?
It's a lot of questions.
It is.
Just basically,
what's your experience personally?
Sure.
Yeah.
I was a teenager a mere decade ago. Wow. So I might actually have dated information. Jace probably actually knows what it's like to be a teen.
3 years ago, I was a teen.
You were only a teen 3 years ago. But when I was a teen, I spent a lot of time trying to figure out where I belonged in community. Like specifically in high school was not my favorite season of life in terms of just the friendships that I had and the relationships that I was able to make weren't super substantial. So I felt pretty isolated. Also had a lot of questions about God, mostly intellectual questions. But the doubts around that, I think, added to the anxiety of being a teenager, like not sure what my purpose was, if God really existed, or if I should relate to him if he did exist. And so I feel like if I could summarize my experience as an adolescent, it was like, where do I belong? And then where can I find the answers to these really big questions in life? There were too many voices, I think, speaking into my brain to really find clarity. So even though I heard a lot of answers, I couldn't really settle on one to like have peace about some of those bigger questions. Yeah. So that was my experience. What about you, Brittany?
So I grew up in the church as a pastor's kid, and so a lot of people describe that as like a fishbowl. And so I was often being watched, or at least I felt like I was being watched by everybody. And so I guess I was also wondering about belonging and like, does anybody actually know me or love me? And then I was so afraid that I wasn't actually a Christian and that like that I wasn't saying the right words to God. And so my questions about God were more so like, does he actually love me? Does he actually care? Did I do enough good to make sure that he would love me? And so I didn't actually fully understand the gospel of grace for a while. I think I'd heard it, but it hadn't fully internalized. So I knew who Jesus was. I just didn't realize the simplicity of the gospel. And so a lot of my thoughts around God were very fear-filled.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say for me, just giving you guys a little snapshot looking back, I would say when I was like a teen growing up, kind of like always knew God was there, kind of grew up in a Christian family, but always kind of felt lukewarm on the idea. I wanted to believe, but I didn't really know if I did believe. And instead of like kind of exploring that belief, I kind of just went with the grain, went with the flow, said I was a believer. And I was kind of always, in and out. And then what really kind of pushed me away when I was a teen was I had a very good friend of mine who was tragically killed in a car accident. And I just remember I completely turned away from God in that moment. And I was like, I'm so like done. Like an all loving God would never do this. And I just like, I turned away from God. And like in that moment, like even like not even related to that feeling of like anxiety, depression, like they kind of like built up. And like giving a different perspective as like a teen male, I feel like there's not a lot of like, at least in my experience, there wasn't a lot of opportunity to outlet those emotions. It wasn't ordinary to express that to your friends, and that can just like really build up. And I even took that into college with me, even like more later teen years, and thankfully with some help, and Paxton, I give him a lot of credit, was able to bring me back into that relationship with God and really changed my life for the better. But that's just a little snapshot of my story.
Yeah.
Maybe we should clarify that the two of you are brothers.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was just thinking that. I was like, yes, for context, these two are brothers.
That's why we sound the same.
Yes, you might not be able to tell the difference between us.
Makes me want to try to sound like you.
Yeah.
See how close.
I do feel like you sound related, but I can tell the difference a little bit. But anyway, but thank you for sharing those stories. I think, as I was thinking for myself, a lot of depression, anxiety, questions, loneliness. And so I think teens deal with a lot of these big questions, but don't really have like the direction or the even maturity yet. And a lot of people, it's a lot of silence too. Like we don't know how to share, like you said, or where to share. So I think that's a really good context. So what led you to working with teens now? I know probably a lot of factors, but what are some things that rise to the surface for you?
I was honestly asked by a previous youth pastor to start working in the Sunday school, middle school ministry. Ever since I was in, I think third grade, I started working with the kindergarten through second graders when I was in church, and then just kept like working with the grades below me. And so I was very much so involved in kids ministry. And I came to High Point in like 2017, and I was like, I just need a little bit of break from kids ministry. And like a year later, the youth pastor was like, hey, have you ever thought about working with youth? And I was like, that sounds different enough. I think I can try it. And so I just kind of jumped in and was like, I have no idea what I'm doing, but it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. How long have you been working with teens now?
Since 2018.
Okay.
Yeah. So how long is that now? 7 years?
Yeah.
Nice. I feel like I'm about to one up you because I served just slightly longer than Brittany. But I started serving with teens in 2015. About when I was a senior in high school, I started doing Mission to Madison Madison Missions.
Yes.
With Black Hawk Church. Mission to Madison is the one we do, which is very close.
We ripped them off.
We did. It's the generic brand version.
It's like Fleet Farm and Farm and Fleet.
Yes, it is. It is. So I was serving that. I loved it. This is kind of a nuance to my story, but like I grew up going to Black Hawk Church's youth group, and I really liked it there, mostly because of the community. It was kind of on and off for me, but it was really, I knew that there was something different about that space. As a kid, I couldn't really put my finger on it or figure out the truth of it, but I liked it. And so I was serving in that space as a volunteer and had a lot of the gifts to do a good job. The students thought I was cool, kind of like Jace now. This is the same vibe. They're like, this guy is so cool.
Oh, yeah. College kids are so
young,
cool.
His hair is flowy. I love it.
Justin Bieber.
Yes, I look up to him now because of his hair. So then I was doing that and I really loved it. I kind of was like, I never thought of it as a career until after college when I started taking faith more seriously. I was like, oh, maybe I should look into doing ministry, and then tried an internship here at High Point and loved ministry and decided to keep going. And so now I got my MDiv and I'm a pastor here.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, what led me to working with teens, they're so fun. Like, first of all, nobody will be more honest with you than some teens and tell it to you straight.
What was that guy whispered behind you as you were walking out the door the other day?
Yeah, I mean, well, yesterday I was walking out the door and a teen said, Paxton is cooler than you. So I'm leaving. I'm like,
he was trying to be funny, but
of course Paxton wanted to bring that
was
up.
a wake up. I was literally
he
driving.
didn't just say it; he whispered it like under his breath, like, as you walked out, and I just started laughing. It was so
I'm
funny.
like, at least say it to my face.
Yeah,
but
totally.
As I'm driving home that day, I'm like thinking, is Paxton cooler than me? I'm like thinking it in my head, like, where did I go wrong?
No, the answer is no. You're definitely cooler.
Well, that's here nor there, but it's so fun. But really what led me to working with teens is like reflecting on my own experience as a teen and like just really wishing I had somebody like an adult that I could look up to and kind of like express my emotions to, and like, cause it's just a different feeling when it feels like this person has more wisdom and they want that relationship with you. And that kind of began, I coached lacrosse and I coached the teenage age, and I kind of got into it as, I just love the sport. I just wanted to, continue in the sport however I could, but it really grew into like, okay, I can be a mentor for these kids and like show them like, okay, this is how you play goalie, but this is also how you be a man, and this is how you interact with people. This is how you build relationships. So it kind of began there, and then I've been volunteering with Mission to Madison here at High Point Church and have just built so many great relationships with a lot of the teens here, and yeah, it's been awesome.
Okay, so what are some of the primary questions teens are asking or issues they're facing today in your experience? So how do these issues and questions they're facing impact teens' mental health too? So kind of both of those. Like, what are the questions? How do you see that impacting their mental health?
I can start. They ask a lot of questions. I think it's so variable by the teen, what specifically is relevant to them. Obviously, we have a lot of teenagers who aren't sure if God exists, and I think there's this quote that I heard recently that I've heard before, but I think is really good. It's some guy said, the two most important questions you can ask in life are, does God exist? And if he does, what must I do to be related to him? And the truth in that is that God is the source of this, everything that's objectively true, good, and beautiful in life. It comes from God and his character. And the way we ought to live as human beings comes directly from him, if he does exist. And I think when teens don't have that sorted out, there's a lot of anxiety and fear and hopelessness, all kinds of things come out of that. So I do think being in the church, and this is obviously coming from a very Christian perspective, but what we need is God, and we need Jesus. We need relationship with him. That's how we were designed to be. And so when that's offset in a student, it's going to manifest in a ton of different mental health outcomes like depression, anxiety, fear, social anxiety, all kinds of different things will happen from the teen. But what's cool about that, I guess not cool, maybe is the wrong word, but what's good about that is that if we help the teenagers sort out their relationship with God, there can be a lot of profound healing just from that element of it. I've seen that recently in one of our students who's now graduated into college, but she was just ridden with social anxiety when she was here at the student ministry. Before she became a Christian, she was kind of seeking the Lord, but she became a Christian probably late in her senior year at a retreat. And man, over the past 9 months, you know what I'm talking about right now?
I think so.
Yeah, they have just really turned it around in a really profound way. Like totally different person, totally different outlook on life, much more joy, now serving in the church, feels like they have a purpose and mission in their life. And I think that, we could talk about all the intricacies of the different questions that were answered, but ultimately it came down to she dedicated her life to Christ and oriented her life around him. And that drastically changed everything because that's at the foundation of the human experience. Yeah. And so that I think is the biggest question I try to get to with students is what is your relationship with God like? Where are you at with the Lord? And from there, a lot of healing can come. That's not to say there's, not things that Christians struggle with. Certainly there are. But that's probably the biggest one that we try to get at first.
Yeah. I'm thinking back to the Black Hawk youth leader training with Ken's. I think she said that Gen Z's big question is, what is beautiful? Do you remember that?
Sure.
Yeah.
That's a good one. Yeah, you should riff on that.
Yeah, I think that was one thing that really hit me because it was
Yeah.
going through like the different generations and what their questions have been about God or about the world. And so like their focus is on authenticity and beauty. And so a lot of what they're looking
authenticity
for.
was millennials.
Oh, really? I
That
think
makes
there's
a lot of sense.
I think there's still a little bit of it in Gen Z
There
as
is.
well because
I mean,
they're
there-
like calling out so much crap.
All of them always exist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's
That's
just like
true.
an emphasis.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And I'm close. I'm at far end of the millennial spectrum. So I guess I feel both of them. But yeah, they're constantly looking for what is beautiful. And this world doesn't shape God as beautiful. And so like, it's really based on what they're hearing and what they're seeing. But I think that authenticity piece does come in because they're like, oh, some of the stuff that we see is fake beauty. And so then they see right through that. Some of them do. And then others are just so focused on themselves as being beautiful. Are their friends beautiful? How are their friends seeing them? I mean, this is definitely from like a female perspective. I know there's some men that are working through this too, but that's especially what I've seen in the middle schoolers is like, do other people care about me? Do they find me beautiful? Am I beautiful? Like what defines beauty?
Yeah, it's like really aesthetic, like and out. That can be really external,
Right.
If it's not the meaning that's
Yeah.
beautiful. Yeah.
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 Like, what does a beautiful life look like?
Right. Yeah.
And we try to talk about how God is beautiful. There's an argument. We were just talking about this yesterday. There was an argument for God's existence that I heard about the other day from beauty. And so like the fact that things are beautiful points to the fact that there is a
Yeah.
beautiful God who made them. And so
The
the answer
creator.
is there. It's just, will the church adapt to this question that people are now asking? Because we don't usually preach about the beauty of God.
Yeah.
Certainly not in a way that appeals to men.
Yeah.
So that's a challenge for the church to answer this upcoming generation as they seek to answer that question.
Yeah. Jace, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, God is definitely so beautiful. And this is like totally off the topic, or not on the topic, but like the woodpecker, like I was just reading a thing about like how it like proves God is real. Cause like the way it is designed, because like, it's like it should have a concussion, like its head should explode, but like its tongue is literally like wrapped around its brain. And it's like a
Whoa.
little football helmet. And I'm like, wow, like God did that.
Yeah.
But that's okay. But going back to kind of the original question, some of the questions that I get from teens is like, who am I? Do I belong? Like, what's my purpose? Is God real? And, like, I think a lot of times in the church, teens especially think like, okay, once I give my life to Christ, everything's going to be okay. I'm relieved from suffering. And that's just like not how it works.
Yeah.
And I think kids, like they give themselves to Christ. They're like, I believe in God, but I'm still anxious. I'm still depressed. Like, why isn't this working? And that can like lead them away from God at most. And it's like, no. Like God is, like suffering's in the Bible, like it's expected, but God is here for you through that. And I think like what was really important is giving them a space to ask those questions, is giving somebody a space to talk, because they feel like they can't. And if you can just be a person who like can walk them through those questions and guide them through those questions and know it's okay and open that door for like healing and growth through the church, I think it can just really open the door for like mental health. And I think it should be more talked about with teens that like it's okay to struggle and it's okay to have like mental health problems, and like God still loves you through these problems, and it's just because you're suffering doesn't mean that God is not there for you.
Yeah. I was thinking when you were talking about suffering, I think a question is, how is suffering beautiful, right? Like, how does it form how do you suffer beautifully? And I think when it comes to mental health, that's what we're missing as a culture in general. We think, oh, there's an issue, there should be something that fixes it, right? Or it takes it away, or like, what can we do to relieve the symptoms? But rather reframing it, I think the gospel and the scriptures and the church can do this, has capacity for this, to say like, no, suffering is part of the human experience. How do we do that beautifully? Yeah. And that's a really good answer to the questions of this generation. Okay, so in the book Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt, spelled H-A-I-D-T, not hate, H-A-T-E, he talks about how children and adolescents, and I think generally people, but we're thinking about forming people, right? How they need both mastery and communion in order to develop. So boys are kind of like, we all need both, but boys are primarily wired for masteries, kind of like that agency and like, yeah, I can like do these skills, and I'm good at them. And girls are primarily wired for communion and relationship. Again, we all need both, but there's kind of like a primary that comes out. So how have you seen this to be true, or have you seen this to be true in your work with adolescents and the struggles they face and how it affects their mental health?
Yeah, I have a recent specific example of this at Mission to Madison, which Jason and Paxton were talking about. So there was a night that we were talking about how the body of Christ, or how Christians do not love each other well, and how we are called to love Christians first and then everyone else. And so something I had them do was I gave them a piece of paper and I asked them to write down, what is the worst thing that someone has ever done or said to you? And then on the reverse, what is the worst thing you have said or done to someone else? And as I was giving them space to do that, the girls and guys are always kind of split, so I'm hearing sniffles and like seeing like tears from the girls' side as they're like kind of just reliving some of this stuff that they've experienced. And then I have the guys on the other side being like, what if I can't remember the worst thing that someone has said to me? And the girls were like, what? How do you not remember that? And it was just such a clear example to me with like the girls' dumbfoundedness that like they respond so differently to communion. And granted, like the guys do still need it, but the girls just like crave that community and like think so much about the times when they didn't feel like they were in community that it was just so obvious the like difference there.
Yeah, totally.
I think I see the other example. I haven't heard that quote before. Perhaps I should have read it in the notes, but
right.
I might have skimmed over
What do you think
it.
about it?
I do have thoughts. When I think about the guys in our ministry, and I think your point is good not to make it a guy-girl thing, because I do think both exist, but I do see men wanting a place to serve within the church and make an impact. And so as we've done more with the teens, we've tried to give them opportunities to serve in accordance with their gifts and let them develop I've said this to our leaders a bunch of times, but we let students and really adults too who are inexperienced teachers or worship leaders or announcement givers shoot their shot on the youth Wednesday nights announcements or worship team.
It's a safe place for them.
Yeah, and sometimes it's like amazing, and sometimes you're like, wow, that would have been better if it was someone else. And that's okay. Like we give them that opportunity to grow in their gifting and to make a difference in accordance with their mastery of these skills. And for men, I think that's really important for them to know, like in the church, there is a need for them, that they have gifts to bring and that they can do something to serve the church. That I think gives them ownership and makes them want to come back. I think that's true for women too, but especially men. So I've noticed that when the men and the male students get engaged and are doing something, their attitude shifts.
Absolutely.
And how they come to that space, because they're a part of it now and they have something to give and they feel valued.
Yeah, they have skin in the game.
It leads to belonging, which is one of those core felt needs of teens. Like, do I belong? When you have a role. Yeah. Yeah. Any other thoughts, Jay?
I mean, just looking at the question and more like the boys is like, the girls are primarily wired for communion and the boys are primarily like wired for mastery. Like I feel like I do see that in the youth. I do see boys, they're more competitive. It's almost like they're trying to like one up each other and like, I have this skill, you have this skill. And it's like, it's a very competitive atmosphere, and it sometimes it can be separated. And it's like, but what was a beautiful thing, what I saw in Mission to Madison is, just even like all the students were coming together in communion, and it didn't start that way at the start of the week. There was more division, and I think kind of it was God's work through the week that like there was a division between people. Like they were being shy, but throughout the week there was emotional baggage was coming up. And I think that like a lot of these kids were able to make like great strides in processing these emotions and having this feeling of healing. I would say a lot of it has to do with, communion. And I feel like especially with boys, a lot of it's like, like they're not thinking like, okay, like, let's get together and share our emotions. That's like, you can just like even look at like a social psychology, like developmental psychology, like that's not being like shown to men, and they're not learning that like that's something that we should be doing. But at the end of the day, we're all humans and we all need communion regardless of gender.
By communion, we mean community.
Yes. That's what the word that like
I just want to
some
make
of the,
sure.
yes, because we use communion in the
That they
church
know.
as a
Yes.
as a like sacrament and an ordinance and a practice. But yeah, what we mean here is community, and we're saying communion because that's kind of what
When you
some of
commune with someone.
Yes, yeah, and that's what some of
Communion.
this like
That is a
research
good
is
word.
saying, and wanting to get some like experience around that in the church. And like from what you guys are saying, I just think coming back to mental health and what hurts or helps mental health and healing, you know, a lot of the cultural issues right now are social media, and a lot of our lives are online. And what you guys are talking about is this in real life ownership, contributing to a community. Like they're not just coming to youth group and consuming either just the message. They're participating in the worship, in announcements, in serving each other, and in like what you're talking about, serving their community and walking with each other through healing. And that's really, really, really profound. Like that is like, if that could be treatment, like it should be, right? Like, and that's kind of how I view it is, you know, when people come through Oaks, it's like, this is really, it's going to be hard. I think that's part of the thing is like, it's really scary and hard, but that's how anxiety is overcome also, is like pursuing those things in courage. So thanks for sharing some of those examples.
We do encourage them all in that direction, not to say they all do it, but I think that for me, when I hear that, it makes me want to like tell the people listening, like you should be involved in a church or in some like way where you're actually contributing and pouring out a little bit too, because well, one, Jesus says it's more blessed to give than receive. So is that true? If you want to know, you should try giving and see if that's the case. But also it reminds me of where Paul writes that everyone has like a supernatural gift that they're given by God to serve the church, and how much we would be missing out on if we didn't identify those gifts in our young people and then have them develop those gifts such that they can use them to serve the church.
Right.
Because I mean, sometimes it feels like at church we all come to hear one person's gift.
Yeah.
And there's like 800 people, 800 gifted people listening to this one person's gift, but everyone has a gift to give to serve God's people. And
you would just be surprised about like the number of teens that like don't think they have that gift.
Yeah.
And it's so easy, like from when you're looking at them, you see that gift.
Yep.
It is blaring you in the eyes, and it's so like, wow, this is amazing. Look at this gift. And you know, you talking like, what are you talking about? I don't have any gifts. God didn't give me any gifts. So like, just if we can just get the teens to see like the beauty that God has planted inside them and the gift that they have, I think it would do wonders.
Yeah. And how they see that in community. They see it in somebody else calling it out in them. I think, did we talk about it Made Whole, about how like we are hurt in relationships with people and then we're also healed in relationships with people? That's what I was thinking too, of like this community where you feel like you belong, you feel like you can contribute to, like that is where you're going to be healed, even though that's like the probably most scary place to be, because that's where you were hurt as well.
Yeah.
And I think especially with teens in that group, like it's one thing when a leader's saying, you know, you have this gift and, you know, I really see this in you. But when it comes from your fellow teen and it's somebody your own age saying like, wow, like, you know, so-and-so, like you have this beautiful gift. You can bring joy to a room. You can make anybody smile. Like you are so gifted. It means so much more. And that's why I think it was so beautiful in Mission to Madison to see that community come together.
Yeah.
I think that's another like special thing about the church and the Christian faith is that's supposed to be baked in. Like you were saying, Brittany, sometimes it doesn't happen. Like you were saying, sometimes we don't love each other as Christians, but the church should be this place where we are exhorting one another. That's what it talks about in the scriptures, that we're brothers and sisters, like encourage each other in your giftings. There's a part for each of you to do, and you're part of the whole body. And if you don't have any of those parts, it doesn't work. And I think building that culture of how do we call those strengths out of one another? How do we give space to develop them? Because sometimes like you don't mature in a vacuum, right? You need to start out immature, trying something. Just like riding a bike, you have to get back up on the bike when you don't know how to ride the bike yet. And so I just think youth group is such a beautiful space to do that and to build those like relationships, confidence, and protective things. Did you want to say something? You looked like you were going to talk.
I'll say that, I guess to summarize, if you're listening, you do have a gift to give, and come share it with us. Like we want to see it, and we want to encourage it in you. And if you're someone who sees someone else's gift, please encourage them and love them as we should, because that's a big part of healing. I think that'll instill purpose in people. Yeah,
I think I'll also say this too. Like sometimes there's that competition, or felt like if I encourage them, like maybe there's not a spot for me. I don't know. Sometimes teens can feel that in relationships. Honestly, adults can too. And just to encourage that like in the body, there's a place for all of us. And so encouraging each other and loving each other is really key.
Mm-hmm.
So if you were to give any more encouragement to parents of teens specifically as it relates to their teenagers' mental health and relationship with the church, and maybe youth group specifically, but the church, what would that be? What would you encourage parents of teens?
I love how you so naturally like weave 3 questions
Yes.
into one, and then you're like, here you go. I love it. I'll
That
try to
sounded
get them
like
all.
you don't
Parents-
love it.
I love it. No, parents, church, youth ministry. For parents, please talk to your kids and ask them questions. There's this fun tip that Nate Wagner gave me, who is a parent here, who's a very good parent, I would say, from seeing his kids and how he's done it. He always said that he would go to his kids at the end of the day, like as they were winding down for bed, and he would ask them at that moment when they're like about to go to sleep, how was your day? Is there anything like you want to talk about with me in like the darkness of like their room or like the almost dark? And this is like studied, but also like from his experience, like people are more open to like having
Yeah.
good conversations
yeah.
at this time of day for whatever reason. And he's just said like he's had so many good conversations with his kids. So I guess I'll give a pro tip for that. And the exhortation would be just reach out to your kids in the ways that are natural for you. Ask them how they're doing, even if they're like, I don't want to talk to you about it. Like you still should reach out and ask them because it means something to them.
Yeah.
If they ask you how your day is. It'd be like if your spouse like stopped asking you how your day was, even though you maybe usually say it was fine, thanks for asking. If you stop asking, they're going to think you don't care. So do ask. You want to throw in something else?
Yeah.
I have more to say, but I'll stop.
Sure.
at
No.
that moment.
It kind of pivots well because you were like, I can tell Nate has parented well because of the way his kids turned out. The encouragement I had was actually from a conference I went to recently where they were talking about how you do not have to be a perfect parent in order for your kid to turn out perfectly. Granted, it seems like there's like
this
some
is good, yeah.
correlation there, but something they said was they were like, God is and was the perfect parent, and Adam and Eve still sinned. The fall still happened. And so God is perfect. His kids are not. And so you as a parent being perfect doesn't mean that your kid is going to turn out perfect. And so this kind of bleeds into like a challenge, but I think that what teens need more than a perfect parent is like a repentant parent and someone who comes to them and says like, hey, I screwed up. You shared this really hard thing with me and I did not handle it well. Like, I feel like that's especially a fear for parents is that like if their kid comes to them and tells them something, they're going to be shocked and not know how to respond and maybe respond poorly, or maybe they have already. And so it's a theme. Like, go to your kid and apologize to them and like deeply heartfelt, like say what you did, and to the point where it feels like they could reject you. And like, that's where you're going to have that connection piece. And like, that's probably a lot of what Nate's conversations were too, would be my guess, is he's very open about his own faults with his kids. And that's been really encouraging to see.
Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah, I would just say, I mean, kind of going with what Paxton and what Brittany said, I would just say, like, if you're showing up and trying, like, that's what really matters. And the kid is going to see that. Even if it feels like, you know, they're shutting you down and they're not listening, like, your presence still, like, speaks, it speaks volumes. And, like, they just really need to know that, like, someone is in their corner no matter what. And, like, nobody's expecting you to be, like, you know, the perfect therapist or, like, Dr. Phil and just have the, you know, the perfect solution to their problems. Like, that's not the expectation. The expectation is that, you know, you just give a listening ear. You know, you have some empathy and you understand. And, like, that just simply, like, just being available over time, it makes, like, so much of a difference, especially with teens. It is such a weird age, and, like, but they, even if it doesn't seem like it, they really just need somebody in their corner that they know is always going to be there. So I would just say that's the most important thing.
Yeah.
How would you encourage, kind of off of this question, how would you encourage a parent of a teen who like doesn't want to go to youth group, like doesn't want to go to engage in church? You know, how would you encourage them, I guess?
The first thing I would ask is like, how often are you going to church? Because I mean that like studies show like the teens, well, kids generally will, the number one thing that causes a student to continue in their faith is if they see a parent who is close with them in relationship and they witness actively participating in their own faith in a way that's vibrant and good. So there's like, it's not, I know Jay said this is very important. It is very important that you're present, you're like relationally with them. But if you like do your devos in prayer and hide all in a corner and you never invite them into, they never see you reading the Bible, they never see you praying, they never see you go to church, they never see you serve, they never see you go to small group, that means something. They're going to be like, they're going to think, even if you are doing all those things in secret, not saying that, I don't know how you would ever do that. But if that was the case, they would think that church isn't that important to you. So they have to see you doing that, and you should be telling them like, well, I go to church because of this reason, and I read my Bible because of this, and you should be inviting them into that. If you are doing all those things, or you are actively in the church and they're just like not about it, I mean, there's not going to be a one-size-fits-all answer for that. Yeah. Is it social anxiety that's making them not come? Is it that they don't like God? Is it they had a bad experience with people? Is it they want to play video games instead? I mean, I've heard all these reasons.
But
all
I hear,
very different
I hear
answers.
You saying though, like, get curious about it.
Yeah,
that's
like instead of just like instead of just forcing or assuming, get curious about what is the thing.
Yeah, what is the real obstacle between them and going to Christian community?
Yeah,
because it is a command. It's not a command to go to youth group per se, but it is a command to be in Christian community in the church. So I would tell them that, and then I'd be like, so let's sort this out because we're doing it. And we're doing something. And maybe the youth ministry that they will go to is not the one for them. Maybe they need to try a different one.
And that's totally okay.
Yeah, we love the other youth ministries around Madison. There's a lot of good ones that do great. So if you're listening, you're like, my teen doesn't like my church's youth group, you could call your pastor and be like, is there any other ministries that you'd want to plug? But it kind of depends. Like I'm kind of saying, it kind of depends. But ask about it, help them resolve the problem, recognize that it is a command, and lead by example in your own practice of the faith. Are you involved in community and actively participating as an example?
I like how you are saying both. There's that boundary, or that, I mean, your command in Scripture of, okay, we do have to do this, but also there's freedom. And how does that look for you based on what you're wondering about, what you need, and where you're at? So I think there is that both. I think sometimes I see parents afraid to set that hard, like, we do have to do this in some way, like, how are we going to make that happen?
It can be a lesson for them. And like, you could say like, hey, I don't like going to see Nick preach all the time, but I do it, because that's what the Lord has commanded me to do. And so you go, and this is your chance to also be obedient.
Yes.
Or whoever,
Yeah, totally.
I like to pick on Nick a little bit. Maybe whoever. It's Nick. All right, we'll stick with that.
Jace, do you have something you want to add to that?
The one thing I would add, and you guys kind of did mention this about getting curious, but I would just say, beyond even curious, seek to understand. I think there's a difference between curiosity and really like seeking to understand. Like, why don't you want to go to a youth group? I want to play, I play video games instead. Well, why do you think they want to play video games instead? You can always go deeper, and you can kind of just understand it. And I think like you have to like be open with them as well. And it can't come as like, and it is what the Lord commands, and we ultimately want them to go to youth group, but you have to understand that this is a teen, and they think a lot differently than you, and they're naturally going to rebel. And just seek to understand and just really have that conversation with them, and be open in the conversation would be my advice.
Yeah. Kind of going another step deeper to parents of teens, like if they are afraid of their child or their teen struggling with mental health, or their teen is struggling with mental health, what encouragement do you have for them as a fellow sister and brother in Christ?
Encouragement is in like a hang in there type encouragement, or encouragement is in like, you should do this? Either one. Exhortation or encouragement. I think most people are like, if you have any advice, please tell me. Because usually that place in a parent, you're like, what do I do? Right. And so I think that could be part of it, knowing that this isn't prescriptive for everyone, but also, what's a piece of encouragement for that moment? I'd say insert yourself, ask, we've said this a bunch, but ask questions about it. Be willing to acknowledge the ways that you've contributed, if that's the case, and apologize. Be praying for them. Yeah. That's probably a really big one. Be praying with them on a regular basis about that. Help them to find the resources that they need to work through this, and don't expect it to all happen at once. Yeah. I think Brittany's word was good, like about it not being up to you necessarily. It's ultimately up to God to affect a person's heart. Yeah. So you can do all the right things and still your kid might choose to go their own way for a season in life or forever. And that's not really something you have total control over. And so you got to kind of let that go.
Yeah.
And that might, if you really, sometimes I've noticed, this is with me, I feel this, I have with my kids, and they're not teens yet, but I feel that if I make a mistake, that I'm going to like ruin my child forever or something. And that makes me a worse parent because I have this fear, and it makes me not be myself. And so, yes, you want to take responsibility for your actions as a parent. You do have the most impact of any person on your child's life and their outcomes, the studies show. But you also need to hold that intention with the fact that like you are not in total control, and like God is the one who's in control. And so you got to cede that to him, and that will give you the peace you need to kind of walk into some of those really intense situations and be like, I'm just going to do what I can to love this kid, this child of God who I have now, who is also my child. I'm going to do my best to love them in the midst of this.
Yeah, I would say that I kind of have two challenges. One would be, let them feel things and figure it out. Don't be afraid to give them space, because, even when you're going through something, we all need, space to process our emotions. And I think just giving you space as well to respond, because it'll just help. But my other challenge would be try to open up with your teen. A lot of teens, like, they model. If you have a hard day at work and like, it's not, something didn't go your way, express that to your teen and be like, X, Y, and Z. I had the worst day at work, and somebody said my boss was mean, and I'm feeling so stressed. I'm feeling anxious. Like, if you model that opening up and you model that relationship, it can work wonders. Because I remember I read this study once, and it was about like neuroplasticity in the brain, how the brain is changing even in teens, and like how like if the difference between a teen that just has like one supportive person that they can look up to and like, talk to and open up to, versus a teen that like had, however many, it's not that minuscule. But if you look at the difference between somebody who had like, or it is very minuscule, sorry. If you look at the difference between one teen who had, that one person and that teen who didn't, like, the difference is very big. So I would just say like, model it, show your teens that like, it's okay to express your emotions, especially with them. And that's going to like build that relationship, and it's going to make them more comfortable in opening up to you.
Yeah,
that's good.
So good.
Take your stuff to God too. So like express it and then show them how to deal with it in a healthy way.
Yeah. Which I think a lot of dealing with it in a healthy way is to not judge their emotions or your own. Like, this is something I deal with all the time. It's like, I feel something really big, and I'm like, oh, I shouldn't be feeling this way. And if you express that to them in your own emotions, or if you express that about their emotions, like, they're already doing it to themselves. And so they need to know that it's okay to feel, and it's good to feel. And there's like they think that emotions are bad often, but often they're just like, they're kind of like the even ground, right? And so it's what we do with them that's either good or bad. And so I think allowing them space, like Jace was saying, to actually share it. And then if they don't feel comfortable sharing it, be like, you don't have to judge your own emotions. Like, this is part of you, and you need to let it out in order for it to not just keep exploding inside of you.
Totally. Yeah, I loved everything you guys just said. And to summarize some of the key things I heard, one is dependence on God. We need to both model our dependence on God, like in our own struggles, and be honest about like, oh, I'm anxious, or I reacted poorly to that. God, will you forgive me? Like, or going to him in prayer. And then when your teen comes to you saying, let's pray about that, like right now. And then resilience is formed not through not having hard situations happen or having hard feelings happen, but in having support. And yeah, that is really proven in even secular research, is that if you have even just one support person in your life, where it's not an expert, it's not like a clinical counselor, it's someone who knows you and loves you. That's what that means. It is a factor of resilience. It can make a situation of suffering not traumatic. Like, trauma is our reaction to something more than the thing itself. And so like, trauma can become suffering over time when you respond differently to it and heal a little bit. And so it's just a protective factor for resilience to have that support. And then also emotions. I heard you guys talk about that. Emotions are not symptoms. They're not mental health symptoms that need to be fixed. They're a human experience that actually need to be experienced in order to be resolved and to not become these like quote unquote mental health symptoms that we see really prevalent right now, because they don't have to define you. You can feel them and they don't have to define you, right? And so, and God made us to have negative emotions so that we would turn to Him. So I just thought what you guys said was really helpful for both adults and our teens. Okay, so if there are teens or young adults listening, if you were to give encouragement as it relates to their faith in God, and their relationship with the church as part of their healing or well-being, what would that be? Like, what if they just don't see the relevance of that to like how they're doing? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Gosh.
I'm sure they don't often come up and ask you, Paxton, what is the relevance of my faith to my well-being? But if they were to ask that, or they're thinking that, what would you say?
Yeah. There's just so much depth to like the Christian faith and God's existence that it's almost like a silly question to me in a way, in that I'm like, what's the relevance? And I'm like, what is not relevant?
Right. It's almost like an excuse of theirs.
I'm like, you just are blinded to the relevance. Yeah. So it would depend on the person, I guess. If it was just like a random person on the street, I would probably pose the questions I said earlier on. Like, I'd be like, well, somebody said these two questions are the most important. And I'd be like, why do you think they said that? Maybe it would be, I'd ask, depending on the person. But pointing to like, if God doesn't exist, you know, this is all meaningless. We're all just atoms bouncing around. Consciousness is a mistake. And, you know, you really have no significance at all. Is that how you live right now, thinking that way? And no one lives like that. And then I might be like, okay, so let's try to find an alternative perhaps to that. That would be like my apologetic approach. Maybe that's not what you're looking for. If they're just like a Christian in the church and they're like, yeah, I'm not sure about the relevance of God or if God exists, my trope has usually been, have you prayed and asked God to reveal him to you recently?
I think that's helpful.
Because then I put it in their court. And part of my feeling with this, when you even asked me the question, is like, I cannot do that for you.
That is, I think that's a really important thing to be honest about, because I think people, so I do get this question a lot, or this statement of, yeah, I do believe in God, but I don't really actually know how that relates to my mental health. Like, or like when people are coming through Oaks, like they don't really see it as, it seems like healing is something to happen so that they can relate with God, instead of what does God have to do with my feelings right now, my depression, my struggles. And so I think like that is kind of the question to me, is like they might even believe in God, but not maybe see themselves in the story.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I'll try to answer the question more forthrightly then. What I feel is like when someone asks me that, I'm like, I cannot do that for you. And I want to like just pray with them almost to be like, look, I can't make God relevant to you or real to you, but he can.
Yes.
Have you been seeking him? How has that looked? Like God says, if you seek me, you'll find me. Knock on the door will be open to you. And I would probably quote that and be like, so why don't you go and see what happens? And you know, what's the worst that could happen? But if someone was like, God is not relevant to my depression, I would start to ask questions about like, well, why do you think you are depressed? Do you have any idea about what's going on? Is it related to a lack of purpose? Is it related to hopelessness? Is it related to fear? And I'd be like, if they're a Christian, I'd be like, well, do you think God has anything to say about fear? And then the answer, if they've read the Bible, they're like, well, yeah, he talks about fear quite often. It's like, okay, well, yeah. So yes, he does have relevance for our fear. And like, does God say anything about your purpose and your eternal destiny? And it's like, well, yeah, he says some things about that. So yes, he's relevant. And then it's like a question of like, how can we bring these truths to life for the person? And
But
you're going to do that.
The Spirit can do.
Only the Spirit can do, but like you can open the Bible that the Spirit works through and read with them and
give
take
them a
to
place
church
where they can serve. I think like them seeing, oh yeah, this is how God made me.
Telling stories, introducing them to a person, maybe an advocate who has experienced these sorts of things before and seen how God has healed them. But gosh, it's just a journey. I mean, like even to try to answer these questions on a podcast feels almost like, it just feels feels so difficult because it's like, well, I would want to walk with that person
Yes.
in the midst of that, and it would look really different per each person. But my confidence, like, am I intimidated by that kind of question? Absolutely not. Like, I'm like at the point of I used to be like asking that question, and now I've seen God move so profoundly in so many different situations that I almost chuckle when people ask me that, because I'm like, you're just not looking. Like, you don't see what God is doing because you're not looking. And he does care about you, and you do have a purpose. And there are days when my faith is weaker, and I'm like, I don't believe that as much as I should.
Right. I was going to say, this is not a downer on anybody that does.
No, if you have
this,
problems, like I have problems where I'm like, oh, God hates me. It's not true, but I feel that.
Yeah.
But I would say a lot of things, probably, maybe more than I should, in that situation of like, God does care. Here's all the ways that I know he cares. Here's some stories of how I've seen God move in other people's lives. He could do this for you. Here's this person who I know who's wrestled with this. Because at this point in my faith, I've met basically every problem that exists under the sun. I've seen someone deal with and walk with in the Christian faith. Yeah. And their faith has helped them in all those situations.
One takeaway I have to kind of answer your question, if you are a teen or a young adult listening, like what encouragement is, find someone to walk with you, because that will help you process your faith and what you're dealing with. And sometimes we do need someone to encourage us and say, like, this is what I see, or I had that question. Here's what I've seen God do. So I think if you're not sure, find someone to walk with you, because it is very specific to your own story.
Yeah.
No, like God knows you and your concerns specifically, and he's watching you like work that out. And if you're doing that, like facing away from him, like he's probably kind of just like, what are you doing?
Yeah, I'm right here.
He's like, he wants to be present with you and like cares about what's going on.
Yeah.
And sometimes it does take another person to help you like remember to look back, because we get so entrenched in our own problems that we forget to bring God into it.
Yeah.
I would just say, like, the big thing right now is, if you're listening and if you're having mental health struggles, whatever it may be, and your faith feels a little confusing or distant right now, like, that doesn't mean like you're weird, broken, or behind. Like, that is like a completely normal feeling to have. And like, I just think like so many of us like wrestle with God when like, and I sometimes I still do, like when life, it feels heavy or uncertain, like it wrestles with God. And I heard this once, like, if there's something like wrong in your life and doesn't like feel like, pull up a chair to God, and God will pull one right back, And that's what I've noticed. Like, pull up a chair. Like, if you're angry with God, like, it's okay to like express those emotions with God. Like, God wants you to be with him. If like whatever your emotions may be, like, they're valid, and God just wants you really to express yourself to him. And like, he will still choose you, and like, he will, like, even in my experience, like, he will move mountains to reach you. And it's just such a beautiful thing. And I think Paxton was like kind of saying, like, the greatest evidence is like your own experience, and like when you reach out to God, because he will open that door and he will come and find you. But if you're feeling a little confused or like distance right now, like, that's completely normal. Yeah. It's okay.
I think it's Jeremiah, that might be wrong, but it says, if you seek me with all of your heart,
I will be found by you.
Yeah. If you seek me with all your heart. So it's not just like, don't fleece God, so to speak.
Yeah.
Like, don't be like, well, God, if you're real and you care, make my lights flicker 3 times.
Yeah.
And that God's not going to do that. But if you say, God, I'm like going to seek you, and I'm going to start looking for you, and I'm going to pursue you, I'm going to pray and ask you like what you're doing in this situation, he's going to meet you, and he's going to meet you in weird ways that only you will understand probably.
Yeah, unique ways.
And then you will tell the story, and some people will be like, that's ludicrous. And then other people will be like, wow, that's really profound. Right.
Yeah.
And that's just how God is. He's weird.
Yeah.
Did we expect the God of the universe to be like just like us Midwesterners?
He is it's a personal relationship, right? And we say that a lot and kind of lose the meaning behind that. But what I hear you saying is God needs to be sought as a person also. Like, he has a way of being that we can't just be like, oh, I want you to do this, like, show me, and then I'll believe you're real, right? Like, he is a person and a being, and so he has his character, but then he also knows you as an individual and made you, and so he relates with you personally.
Right. Yeah. I was thinking about, like, as this relates to mental health, so much of our mental health issues are rooted in identity.
Yes.
And so kind of like what you were saying with the first two, with the main questions, like, if God exists, like, what should you do about it? Like, how do you interpret the Bible then knowing that like if God is real and all these things are incredible about him, like that he is trustworthy, he's faithful, he's promised all these things, he's the most amazing being in the universe, and he created you. If he, the most amazing being in the universe, created you, what does that mean about you? Like your identity is rooted in who you were created by. And if he decided the world needed you in it, that gives you worth. And so like those are the things to me is where it's like, it maybe doesn't say that explicitly in the Bible, but like you kind of have to read between the lines and maybe have somebody else read it with you to be like, if this is who God says he is and he thought you were worth being here, then clearly you mean a lot. And that I think just shatters so much like anxiety and depression on like who we think we are and like how much we hate ourselves, like instead reframing and see ourselves as God actually sees us. And then like working on believing that, because that's going to feel like a lie if you've been believing for your whole life that you're worthless. Like it's going to be really hard to start believing that he is actually good. And so it takes that repetition and somebody else telling you to.
Yeah, I think we had a question here about just that integration. I hear you getting at that of how do you integrate like these kind of common mental health questions right now with God, with the scriptures. And I think it is like what you said, looking for how God operates, right? And what is true in his character, applying it to ourselves. And then kind of what you were saying, Paxton, earlier, just getting to the root. Like we might think, oh, my issue is depression. The scripture doesn't say the word depression in the English translation. I don't think. Maybe it does, but
maybe in the message.
Maybe in the message. It does use the word anxiety, but I think you need to look at the like what is true. Like we are all individuals, but there's also these truths that apply to all of us in our own lives. And so looking for the root of why am I depressed? Oh, I'm afraid. Like I've been afraid for my whole life. So I'm going to look at what God says about fear and what's true about fear. And so I think that's the way to integrate and make relevant to our lives what God says is not to look for the common current language that we're using, but to look at the root of what is leading to those things.
Because the Bible, like if you think about the authors of the Bible, they're people 2,000 years ago, they're not using the same language, and we often think like we're so sophisticated nowadays that like the problems we wrestle with are not the same as them. But really, the reason the Bible has stuck is one, it's inspired, but one of the reasons it's stuck in its inspiration is that it addresses really relevant, deep human issues.
Yes.
Like the deepest human issues. And that's why people read it 2,000 years later and they're like impacted is because these folks from 2,000 years ago are wrestling with the core problems that human beings deal with. And so the deeper you go into what's going on in your own heart, the more likely it will naturally loop into what's biblically going on. But if you just slap labels on stuff and don't really deal with it, no, you will not find relevance from anything.
Yeah.
Right.
Because you're just dealing with an anonymous label that has no cause. And then by definition, it can't be addressed.
Yeah. All right. Any other thoughts on integration and like?
This was supposed to be an encouragement to teens, wasn't it?
No, I've moved on.
Was that question?
No, I moved into, I mean, yes, we've moved from that to how do you integrate the issues you might be dealing with into scripture.
All right.
Or and vice versa, scripture.
My
and your
encouragement to teens is that God can transform your life. I did not believe in God. I was depressed. They said I needed to take medication the rest of my life. I gave my life to Christ. I don't take medication anymore. I'm not depressed. It can happen for you. That's my encouragement. And there's tons of people who have stories like that. Tons. And it's because he's so big, so deep. Yeah. If you commit your life to him, he'll change everything.
And an encouragement related to that might not sound like an encouragement, but when I tell people that, they're like, that is encouraging. That healing unfolds in its time. So it does take time. Like,
yes, that process I just described took 3 years.
Yes, yes. Because like we sometimes on the other side, it does seem really simple or straightforward. And we're kind of like, oh my gosh, that, like, of course that's true, right? But we all have gone through that process of the veil being lifted and becoming more and more free every day. And like I also was on medication in college and came off of it. But that was a period I was very depressed, very anxious, I mean, it's been, I don't know, 10 years. I feel like it's still sometimes working through some of those things. So it is a process, but it's punctuated by these moments of breakthrough, healing, relationship, understanding, because that's what growing in maturity looks like, is you are immature and you keep growing in maturity.
I'm going to go web thinker on this, but
Great.
And this is the last thing I'll say. There is a difference between the punctuated moments of sanctification, we might say, and like the moment you are actually saved.
Totally.
And commit your life to Christ. Like
Totally.
that is a fundamental difference and a shift when you receive the Holy Spirit, and like your outlook on life will change. And something supernatural will happen in your soul, in your heart.
And it is
and
healing.
it will change you. And it is a healing act.
Yeah.
And then that will be worked out for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Yes.
But there is you have to first say to Jesus, like, I repent of my sin and I'm going to turn and follow you. And then when you truly say that to him, you will receive the Holy Spirit and you will be changed. And yes, it'll take a long time after that. But there is you will see an immediate change in the way you think about life because of that.
Yeah.
And you can do it right now.
You can. Yeah.
And you should.
The last thing I'll say.
We can have an altar call at the end of the podcast. But I would like
That's why I'm here, aren't I?
No,
I thought this
yes,
was,
you're the
this is
pastor.
an altar call podcast.
Yeah. I would like
it's
to explain the gospel at the end, just to wrap everything up.
I got ahead of myself.
No, you're good. I mean, we can talk about the gospel all throughout.
Inspiration.
Okay, so for the challenge, there was a question that was like, what would your challenge be to a teen if you were talking directly to a teen about, kind of their faith and their mental health journey? And the challenge that I would kind of have is like, don't sit on the sidelines with your faith. Like, I think it's really easy to go like coast to coast, and like you just always you think, okay, there's just going to be that perfect time for me to like take my relationship with God seriously. And, it can be like, maybe it's 5 years down the road, but I'm telling you, the perfect time is right now, like the perfect time is now. And like, just open up to him and like prayer and like reach him. And I think like it doesn't, like, it can just be like these baby steps to start. Almost like a lot of times, like people are like, I don't know if I'm ready to go all the way in. Like, and Jesus actually like kind of talks about this in the parable of the mustard seed. Sorry. He said like the kingdom of God is like a tiny seed, the smallest of all seed that grows into a huge tree. And I think that's what faith looks like most of the time for me. Like, I just remember even when I was starting out, me and Paxton were at, the pancake house, and he's just like, just pray, man. just pray. And I'm like, you know what? At this point, I was so like down in the dumps. I was like, oh, what the heck? And then just like the most magical thing started happening, and it's just crazy. And it wasn't overnight. I mean, it just slowly happens. And I think that
took a long time.
It took a very long time. And I'm saying like, yeah, and just try not to like treat it like a vending machine and like only showing up when you need something or when it's fun. But like, if you truly come to Jesus with relationship because he is the God of the universe and he loves you, then like that's when like you'll find peace.
So good. Okay, we're gonna jump to question 11.
35.
If you're keeping track. So have you experienced any examples? Obviously we're not going to share like specifics, but just stories and examples of redemptive and rehabilitative. Like, we kind of talk about that in Oaks as like people are being rehabilitated into life, right, in God. But any of these redemptive relationships in youth group that you've seen, like between leaders, like where it's like changed someone's life to be in youth group.
I mentioned the one. You were close with the one.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of like a specific example.
Okay, I'll think.
I can think of just like a simple thing that happened, like part of the like baby steps thing.
Totally.
I was leading in a group that I was the only leader. And so there were a lot of students, and I was trying to meet with them kind of like one-on-one, especially for like birthdays. But like there was like 10 of them, I think, that I was trying to actually meet with. And some of them I was mentoring and some of them I wasn't. And I started to find out that the ones that I wasn't mentoring, which I think I was only mentoring one officially, everyone else thought that I was mentoring everyone else. And so they were all under this impression that like everyone else is getting like more of me. And I was like, guys, I'm just trying to be there for all of you. Like, it's really hard on a Wednesday night. And there was one in particular who I think thought that I didn't like her like at all, because I was like, I hadn't met with her yet. And then I showed up to one of her track meets and I was like, this is the first thing I've been able to make it to. Like, I sat with her mom and just got to see what was happening. And all of a sudden, she just started talking to me on Wednesday nights. And I found out from another one of her friends that that was what was happening, was she thought I was mentoring everyone else and hanging out with everyone else except for her. And then when I showed up, it was just like, oh, you actually do care and you are safe. Like, for some reason, showing up at track then meant I could talk to you, or she could talk to me about like the deep things of life. And so it was just like this really simple shift that happened that just blew me away and was like, okay, God, like you are ultimately in control of like how someone is going to open up and how that like rehabilitation is actually going to start happening.
And showing up in the capacity you have matters. I think sometimes we can feel like it's going to take so much of my time to have a relationship like that. Maybe I can't even do that, but to just show up in the ways you can and say yes to the capacity you have. And that really does make an impact. Yeah.
I think the thing that is really interesting is a lot of times when you think of teens, you have like this stereotypical image in your mind, you know, like this guy slamming a little kid in a locker and locking him in there. Like, teens are mean. Like, you know, go to youth group and the kids are going to be mean. It is the complete opposite. I just remember Mission to Madison, like, you think it's going to be the leaders and that the student leader relationship that's really going to pave the way for healing. And I think in my experience, no, it was the student to student connection, which I was just like, wow, like these kids are so nice. Like, I didn't think kids are supposed to be like this. They're so supportive and like they care for each other so much. And that can just have so much effect on a teen when it's coming from another teen. I think that's got to be, whoa. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, I think in little ways I see this a lot. There are a lot of dramatic, I guess there are some dramatic, like more long-term rehabilitation things, but we do a lot of prayer time. Most of our retreats and like more spiritual things culminate in some sort of time of restorative prayer, not like restorative prayer like we do at High Point in the like 2-to-1 thing, but like just a time where we pray for each other as a group and it's restorative. And man, I've prayed with so many people that have been like, have told me like, oh, that was so helpful for me. Like that helped me realize that God cared about me. That helped me realize God loves me as a father. That helped me realize I'm not worthless when you prayed. And it's not that I'm praying and like super cool or something. Right. It's that like in prayer, like oftentimes I'm just reminding them of what God said. And then they receive it as God's words to them. And they're like, oh, that changed my life. Because now I really do think God, at least in this moment, that God loves me and cares about me. And that does change the way you think about life. Because if the judge of the universe, whose judgment is the only one that really matters, judges you righteous and cares about you, that's significant and changes the way you carry yourself. So I see things like that in little ways all the time. Some of the more intense cases like are long term, but I think there's a sense in which it's like eat an apple a day keeps the doctor away type thing. Like if people are processing their stuff together in prayer and in community, you're not going to have something culminate into something really a big problem that needs to be healed for the next decade. So maybe that would be an encouragement for like some of you guys who are listening who are like, man, I don't have a severe trauma that I'm dealing with. I got all these little things. Still take them forward and receive restoration and community and prayer and like work on those things, because we're all getting chipped up by life all the time. There's this lovely quote. I love this one, but it's like, life is a tough game, and most people are playing hurt. Have you ever heard that one?
Oh, yeah, that's good.
Yeah. It's true. So go and get patched up and like do things regularly to grow and to process what's going on in your life, because life is really challenging. Some seasons much more than others, but always it's wearing on you. So we got to do it together.
Yeah, I think what you were saying too about retreats, like quick plug for those. Like those are not. We often talk about retreats as being like this big explosion of like where we see God at work. I don't think it's just because of the retreat though. I think it is the relationships leading up to it. And then instead of them just seeing each other once a week, they get this whole like 48-hour period where they are smashed together and are like constantly having to process, like there's so much conflict that happens on retreats. Like you have to deal with the stuff that's happening in the moment, and then people get to like lovingly surround you. And then by the second night when we're praying and they're exhausted and they're away from home, there's like kind of like being up at night, like Nate was saying, like there's just this like perfect atmosphere where God is just like, okay, they need this little sleep and they need this much community and
you can only hide yourself for so long, right?
Yes.
Like if you're kind of like holding back, I don't know, eventually
it
people
cracks.
see you for long enough and
it sets the conditions for someone to meet with God. But like what does it is that God is present.
Yes.
And healing
Absolutely.
work in the room. It is not just that they're tired and like it's nighttime.
Absolutely. No.
Right.
Yep.
So
and the lead up to all of that too. Like
Right.
even sometimes people do come like brand new, but for the most part it's people who have been coming for a while, have already built relationships, and then they actually trust the person in front of them enough to share with them the harder thing.
Yes.
One thing I took from what you guys were saying was, there's so many points in my life, at least, where I look back and I didn't realize my life was being changed through all those little things.
Yeah.
But later I'm like, wow, that really changed me. Right. And I think for me, youth group was one of those things where when I was just in it, I didn't know I had trauma. I knew I had some issues. I felt like I had issues, but I didn't know the extent of it. And I also didn't really understand the care I was receiving or how it changed me until, as I kept growing and looking back. So I think that's just to say, remain encouraged that there is transformative work happening where the presence of God is, and he will work in his people, that's promised in scripture. So, he is at work, and as we continue to abide in him, he produces the fruit that we might not even see. Like there might be kids in youth group who it's like, I don't know if they heard a word I said or if it mattered to them. And later it might have really changed their life. Then they were listening all along. So be encouraged in that. Okay. So our youth group at High Point also does a lot with other churches. So do you want to say anything about that and how teens interacting with other people not normally in their community has impacted their lives or relationships or just the culture?
Sure. You're talking about Fuse, which is
Fuse,
we do get-togethers with other churches, and in those events we have hundreds of students come, and we split them up by their school so that they can meet other Christians in their public school. And that's aimed at getting them to have relationships with other Christians that are weaved into their daily routine, because you only see kids at youth group 2 hours a week.
Right.
And they see those other students that are in their school 40 hours a week. So there's an opportunity for a really deep relationship to happen there, but oftentimes kids don't know each other. So that's why we get together with other churches, and it's also to build church unity and like have a good time.
Absolutely.
But that is the primary reason. That's why we do it.
Yeah.
It's great. And we hope that leads to them starting clubs and having relationships. I guess like for other people, the main application for that would just be try to find Christians that are in your circle that you see regularly.
Not just from your church.
Yeah, not just at church, because you see them, once a week, but or hopefully more. Maybe you're in a small group or some other thing. But we try to get people, at least students, to have connections that go beyond just that church community. So if there's other Christians at your workplace, maybe start getting lunch with them, work together. There's Christians at the soccer field in your little soccer mom group. I don't know, like get with them, figure out who those people are, and take the advantage of that time to be in Christian community and to heal and grow, and use that as an outlet to reach other people. Don't like insulate, but like
invite into it.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a chance for you to come together, but then when Christians are together, you can do things to bless the people around you. So
Yeah.
that's basically the Fuse vision in a nutshell without using the fancy words.
Yeah.
We did just have, was it an E&E podcast?
Yep, if you want you can listen to it. It's all the youth pastors being crazy on one podcast.
Pretty entertaining.
Squeeze box is mentioned.
Oh, wow. So
You know what a squeeze box is?
No, I do
not.
It's an accordion.
Oh, okay.
But they called it a squeeze box, which I just,
All right.
oh my gosh.
Wow. Well, that's on the Engage and Quit podcast. It sounds like if you're listening to the Oaks podcast, so you can go listen to that. Okay. Anything else you guys want to say or that came up for you as we wrap up?
I got nothing.
Same.
Okay. All right. Cool.
I'm
Packers
good.
got
Yeah,
so many
this
fans.
podcast is long.
Yeah, it is. I do want to say as an exhortation to end 1 Timothy 4, if you're young or you have teens and you're a parent or you work with teens, I just want to point you to this passage in 1 Timothy 4 where Paul is talking to Timothy, who he mentors and has raised up in the faith, and he encourages him to grow in godliness and says, do not let anyone look down on you because you are young, but set an example for the believers in speech, in conduct, in love, in faith, and in purity. And so just your faith does matter to your whole well-being. And we love you guys. We're praying for you, and plug into community where people can do that for you if you don't have it yet. All right. Thanks, guys, for being on the podcast.
Thanks for
You
having
bet.
us.
All right. See you guys next time.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Engage and Equip podcast. Our hope is that this content will encourage you in your faith, grow you as a substantive disciple of Jesus, and help you feel more connected to the local church. For more uplifting content from High Point, check out our sermons podcast at High Point Church Sermons, or our topical podcast called The Living Room. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.